Hey, Cleveland. This is Andy Varejao of the Cleveland Cavaliers. You are listening to the Sports Fix.
You love sports, and you know a lot. Your friends keep telling you, you should totally start a podcast. Well, it's time you listened and checked out Spreaker.com. People just like you have made their dreams a reality at Spreaker.com. For example, J-Rocc Myers started a Cleveland sports show called The Sports Fix, and now he has thousands of listeners. J-Rocc rocks, and so do you. Start your own podcast today at Spreaker.com. It's easy and free. That's SPREAKER.com.
Sports Fix listeners, like us on Facebook today. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix.
Hey guys, J-Rocc here from The Sports Fix, and we always talking about using our platform to try to help the world and the society we live in, and everywhere I go and everywhere we go, bullying is one of the problems in today's society. There's nothing worse than any person, big or small, strong or weak, adult or child, feeling picked on, pushed around, vulnerable, and victimized at the hands of a bully. Change comes one person at a time, and my good friends at No Such Thing as a Bully are working on skills and techniques and ways that we can all change and make things better for everyone. Find out more at nosuchthingasabully.com.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Catch every UFC pay-per-view live in full HD at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
And welcome in. Away we go live, clicking the dials, pushing the buttons, and getting us rolling here. J-Rocc with you. Charles Morgan in the chat room. No. I don't have to change the intro. I kicked it off that way intentionally. Anderson Varejao, because that will be the final time. At least you'll hear it edited later without the Cavs part. That was it. I thought, you know what? I'm going to kick off one more show here with the old Anderson Varejao, Sports Fix liner, as he is no longer a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Not only that, but as of a few hours ago, he is now a member of the Golden State Warriors. And we'll talk definitely about that here in just a little bit as we get rolling with the show. But I figured only fitting to kick it off one more time with the Wild Thing. For 12 years, he put on his hard hat and his lunch pail, and he went to work for this town in the good times and the bad times. And again, I'll get into it here in just a minute, because there's a lot of things I don't understand about it. And it's not just the Anderson Varejao aspect. I get the fact that he is not the Wild Thing that he was before, but when you look at what they sent out and what they got back, and now I see I'm already getting deep into this. Now the health issues with Channing Frye as well. I'm scratching my head. If Anderson Varejao had sat there and had trouble finding another team, okay, I'm with you, man. But the fact that it didn't take him any time at all to jump into a situation that's at least as good, maybe better, according to some people, shot at a championship. And that's where I go, man, I'm just saying. I don't know that Golden State was sitting around going, oh, we've just got an extra roster spot. We feel sorry for this guy. We're just going to put him on the team. Because I literally already had a couple of people pitch that to me. Well, they're just picking him up for insurance in case like 7 guys get hurt. Right. The team that hasn't had anybody get hurt in the last 2 seasons picked up Anderson Varejao just in case 17 people go down. I'm not saying he's going to go there and do big things. I'm saying he's still able to do enough things. And then again, it's financial. It's money. That was a money deal. The Cavs wanted to get the salary cap or take another $10 million off of the luxury tax that they were going to pay. And guess what? They gave away another first-round draft pick to do it. That's my problem with the trade, by the way. That's my problem with the trade in a nutshell. We'll get to it in a minute. But anyways, hasta la vista, baby. Anderson Varejao no longer with the Cavs. Dan Wismar is going to join me here in just a little bit. We'll talk about that as the Cavs come out of the break. And hey, Anderson Varejao, no Anderson Varejao. The Cavs come out of the break smoking. They took care of business on national TV, fellas, if you will, against the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, made them look silly in their own stadium. He went to town. The Cavaliers made a statement. They did the same thing against Chicago and against their, well, I don't want to say close. I mean, I guess obviously in the standings, Chicago's not their closest competitor this season. Although I think when push comes to shove, I would still bank on Chicago lasting longer through the playoffs than Toronto or any of the other teams. Right now, Chicago's kicking up the rear in the playoffs. I believe they're the 8th seed as we sit right now. Either way, I still think they're the second best team in the East, but that's just my preference. Either way, one of the better teams there, in Oklahoma City Thunder in that category as well, probably right up there, if not a hair underneath the top couple of teams over there in the West. And the Cavs just went to town, took care of business. Kevin Love, I'm going to get into this. I got to intro the show and all that stuff, but I will say this. I don't care who the coach is. I don't care what the style of play is. I'm not talking about pace of play or any of that stuff. If Kevin Love plays ball in the playoffs, like what we saw from him yesterday, and you pair that along to just what everybody else is able to do, and that alone right there is going to make the Cavs a very, very tough out in the playoffs. That Kevin Love, and inspired Kevin Love, getting the double, it's not just the point total. The Cavs have people to put the ball in the hole, depending on how to do it. The Cavs definitely, that's not their problem, although they think it is. They think they need to score points. I still say that I'd have doubled down in the opposite direction. I don't know how trying to get faster to compete with the fastest man in the world is the best plan when your opposite plan is figuring out how to, which that's a bad example because there is no defense in racing, but putting mud on the track and slow. I'd rather race the fast guy on a muddy track and slow him down than sit out here and try to play to his strengths, which is still the mistake that I think the Cavs are making. That being said, there's no mistake about the way they've played coming out of the All-Star break, and it is enticing and it's exciting to see what they did. I was interested yesterday in seeing what went down in Oklahoma City, and I just sat there at the end and said, man, I was like, man, are these guys really just blowing out the Thunder in Oklahoma City? And they sure did. We're going to talk about that. We'll get into the Cavs. Indians, they are playing some baseball. The spring training has begun. Pitchers and catchers reported last week, and guess what? Their position counterparts showing up today. 1 week from today, they'll be playing games that don't count, and 30 of those, then they're playing the ones that do. I cannot wait. And since the last time we did the little sports fix thing here, not only did the Cavaliers send out Andy Varejao, but the Indians brought in some free agent help. We spent some time last week with Dan speculating what they might do. Uribe, Bruce Wood called it. He called in. I can't remember if it was last week or the show before that, but that was one of the names that he popped out there. We were going through Freeze and a couple of the other free agent infielders there, and bada boom, bada bing. There you go. Some people have hit me up, called it the Dolan Blue Light Special, all of that. He's still better than what you had, and I still believe Urshela is going to start in the minors and work his way up. Would you have rather, like Dan Wismar is probably going to come at it, would you have rather seen a Yandy Diaz? Would you have rather seen somebody like that? I don't know, but I have no problem with that. I do think that he is able to contribute, and the more people you have on your squad that are able to, it's a 1-year deal. It's not mega bucks. This isn't Nick Swisher coming in for the mint for 4 years. This isn't a handcuff. So I don't see a problem with it. I think it's nothing. Hey, you know what? The one person that needs to see a problem with it is Urshela. And if he does, and it lights a fire, and he goes red hot in spring training, he can change that. So I'm all about it. I think it was good. Again, it's not the game changer. I don't know that it's, speaking of game changers, I don't know what the sports books we're talking about. The Vegas sports books have installed the Indians this morning as we get rolling as the favorites to win the Central. Now, last year it wasn't bad enough, and we all went in on this, except Mike Brandenburry, of course. Indians going to win the championship. They were everybody's preseason favorites. But here, I mean, hey, Las Vegas sports books, are you forgetting we happen to reside in the same division as the world champions, who just got stronger as the season went, who got better as the playoffs went and who ended up sealing the deal. I'm not saying, hey, I think the Indians, I do think this is going to be a good season. I think it's going to be an exciting season. I really do. I think that the Indians can definitely win 85, 86 games. Is that enough? Is there a push for more? That's where the question mark comes in. But either way, what are the sports books thinking? I don't know how you could put the Tribe above the Royals when it comes to the Central Division. I mean, we weren't even talking about overall in the division. I mean, to me, you got to beat the champs. That's how I've always thought about it and grown up with it. You got to until you knock off the champs, they're the champs, and you have to. The World Series goes through our division. The Indians have a lot of work to do, as we've seen, and they're not the only team doing it. So I just thought that was kind of funny as I saw that here. I had to put it out on our social media a few minutes before the show. I'm like, do you agree? And already I got a couple people saying they're crazy. I'm not saying it's crazy, because I do believe that this, especially with the pitching as they've got it made, I really do like the fact that the bullpen, I think, is going to be strong coming out of camp and has the potential, because of the guys that are going to be coming along end of April, beginning of May, Stammen, Hunter, a couple of those guys. I think that you may see them get a stronger bullpen a month or two into the season once it all shakes out, as we've seen. So that's not it. Anyways, we're going to get into all that. I'm just yapping and rolling and doing all. Those are the things we're talking about today. Cavaliers, Indians, probably hit a little bit on the Browns, talk a little bit about all kinds of stuff going on. Some Buckeyes as we get Dan Wismar in, and we'll crack the phones. Let's do the thing. Welcome in, my friends, to the Sports Fix. I am your host, the Big Daddy on the microphone. Some people call me J-Rocc. Some people call me Jerry Myers. That's what my mama called me. You can call me anything you'd like. Just be happy to have me here. Me happy to have you here each and every time we do this across the Sports Fix radio network. Maybe you're listening live on TuneIn's radio app worldwide, on Spreaker, Mixler, their respective digital and mobile apps. And many of you keep hitting me up. I played it at the beginning of the show. Yes, that was that commercial you heard in Timbuktu. Somebody heard it in Seattle the other day. Across iHeart radio stations. I got a text the other day from the Seattle area. J-Rocc, did I just hear you? Yes, you did. That's fun. But then again, I went over a buddy's house the other day, and as I walk in the door, one of his friends walks through and goes, "So I was watching this movie the other day." I said, "Stop. Jake the Snake?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, that was me in the movie." So anyways, funny little things like that. If you haven't heard it, it's cool. That Spreaker commercial. They love the Sports Fix, and they are promoting us across the country. So maybe you're listening live on Spreaker, Mixler, their respective digital and mobile apps, and perhaps you're enjoying the show live on our home base, thesportsfix.net, your one-stop shop, as we say all the time, for everything you need Sports Fix related. It's got all of our social media widgets tied in there, ways to listen to the show live and in digital delay, all that stuff right there. Bookmark it, thesportsfix.net. Plus, stop and take a look at the banners and look at our sponsors, some of the people that help make this possible, because I don't talk about this a lot, because I just look at us as a radio show, but it is something that is, a lot of people come together to help make this happen, and a lot of good people help me put this out here for absolutely nothing for you guys to listen to and enjoy, and or perhaps mock and disenjoy, whichever you do. I mean, I don't know, whatever your deal is, whatever the reason is that you listen to the show, maybe whatever it is. Thank you guys for doing it. But there's a lot of great people that help make it happen, and your support to them helps us keep this thing going and enables us to keep it free for all of you to enjoy. So check out the page, thesportsfix.net. As well, shout out to the thousands of you guys that listen all around the world on digital delay, on sites 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, like iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, on all of the different podcast platforms that you guys, CarPlay, all the different features that you use. Matter of fact, I came across it on satellite radio the other day going through CarPlay feature. I had never been in a vehicle that had CarPlay before, and boom, switch it through, there's the Sports Fix. It's just, the way technology is growing, that really is amazing, that pretty soon, terrestrial radio as we know it, it's already in the bag. I mean, it will be a la carte. Why would anybody want to sit through? I mean, obviously, the terrestrial radio stations that stay in tune to what people want to hear, they'll stay hot, they'll stay popular. Everybody else will fall to the wayside because no longer will you hold people hostage listening to stuff they don't want to listen to in formats and methods that they don't want to listen to. And this is just proof of that as I continue to see. It's just amazing when you drop into a car and you roll through the dial and now you can find the previous versions of the Sports Fix right there. Just it's insane for me to see it, and it's a tribute to you guys because your work is what has helped build this thing up. So continue to spread the word. Click the share link if you can. Tell somebody else to listen in if they're tuning in live or whatever time this week that you're listening to the show, no matter what site. There's a share button for all of your social media. Click it, use it, tell somebody else that you enjoy getting your fix. You know what I want to talk about real quick before we get into anything else? As I said, Dan Wismar is going to be with us less than 10 minutes from now. We'll get the news in, we'll get Dan in on the conversation, and we'll really have some fun. But let's talk about having some fun. The other night, I don't know if you guys, how many of you saw it. I know some of you did because we had some fun conversations afterwards. But the Bellator fight, this was a weekend of all kinds of stuff. I mean, as a matter of fact, downtown Cleveland was jumping off last night. There was a big WWE pay-per-view event there. There was a UFC just across the way in Pittsburgh, a UFC show last night. There was the big Bellator fight to kick off the weekend. And I had been looking forward to this. I think you guys probably remember I talked a bit about this a few months ago when it was signed. And somebody asked me on Friday what I thought, how I thought the weekend was going to go as far as the various events, what was going to be good, what was going to, et cetera. And I said, well, they're all going to be pretty good, I think. Obviously, WWE usually puts together a good live presentation. I knew that was going to be a good show, and UFC is what it is. It was a Sunday night, which is a kind of a weird thing as far as their usual schedule, but, they're going to get their usual thing. And I said, the Friday night Bellator deal will probably get more eyeballs on it than anything else this weekend put together because of the spectacle. And what I mean by that is you had these weren't top contender matches. These weren't matches of guys that are here and now fighting for who's going to get a title shot or who's going to be the champ or any of that kind of stuff. This isn't this. And I don't want to make it sound like it was the old timers day at the stadium either, although the main event was definitely pushing on that. But it was a series of attractions, as I like to call them in the entertainment business. And you had two of them. First, you had Kimbo Slice, who is the most overrated attraction in MMA history, I think. Makes promoters a ton of money, though. And I remember, this would have been in the early days of YouTube. YouTube's only been around for 2 decades now or whatever. If you were an MMA guy, then you know how Kimbo got started with his backyard fights. It was this whole underground phenomenon on YouTube, these backyard fights, and this guy would just have bare knuckle fights with people, and it became a thing, and Kimbo became a sensation so much that Dana White broke his own rule for hiring freak shows, and he actually brought Kimbo Slice in for some UFC stuff. Clearly not at that. Kimbo Slice not at that level. He's not an MMA fighter. He's just a big tough guy that has no stamina whatsoever, as was witnessed by that debacle that we saw on Friday night, which I'm getting to. So you had Kimbo Slice, and then basically, I don't know, I would call him the new Kimbo Slice. I don't know. This guy's another backyard phenomenon. However, the difference is I know who Kimbo Slice was. Dada 5000, that name didn't mean anything to me. Looked more like an abbreviation for Daytona 500. That's right, Charles. But these two guys get out there in there, and by the end of the first round, they're so blown up, so gassed, so tired. They're throwing everything in slow motion. I will put any one of my professional wrestling matches up against that fight Friday night, and I think more people would lay down actual cash and bet that my match was more legitimate than that thing was. And I don't mean that they weren't trying to win. They were so toast. When they went on the ground, I knew it. When they went on the ground there early, and Kimbo's just laying on, and they expended all of their energy on the ground, which wasn't much with two big guys like that. When they got up and started throwing those sissy blows, and couldn't even finish the punches through, and the ones that did would brush against the guy's cheek. It was like watching two kittens pat at each other in a little play fight when the sun's coming through the window. And I'm telling you, it was hilarious in a bad, perverse way. Thank goodness nobody paid money for those fights. They were free on Spike TV. But Bellator, and I'll tell you what, Bellator was coming up on the UFC. They did Kimbo versus Shamrock a couple of months ago. Did huge ratings. What was that, about 6 months ago? Huge ratings. One of the most watched fights in mixed martial arts history. Terrible fight. Everybody accused it of being a work or being a setup result and everything. Hurt them badly. But then they announced this fight with that fight and in the Shamrock versus Royce Gracie main event, which was 25 years in the making. The two pioneers of the ultimate fighting world, 1-1. Back in the day, they're going to have their rubber match. So here's millions and millions of eyes on Bellator. This is what happened Friday night is the definition of how to kill a business in one night. And I'm not saying Bellator is going to die because they've been around for a long time. They've got a very wealthy owner who wants to keep them going. They've got network television backing. They're not going anywhere, but the momentum that they were building, gone, because that was a territory killer, as they would have called it back in the old wrestling days, those two fights Friday night, because you had millions of eyes on it, but then the product didn't not only not deliver, but did the opposite. That fight, go watch it. If you're not even interested, you just want to enjoy it, go watch, Google search Kimbo versus Dada and go watch it. It was awful. And the knockout was the best. It was like one of those Tyson's Punch-Out ones where you hit the guy and Glass Joe does the big 360 around the ring holding his stomach before he finally falls down. That's what these cats look like. Like Kimbo threw a punch that didn't even hit, and then Dada just rolled around for a minute before he hit the dirt. It was the most slow motion, worthless knockout you'll ever see. It was fantastic. Then the main event came out, and I don't know that I don't even know that I have an opinion on the main event. Part of me wants to say the whole thing was a complete work to set up a rematch, because all that hype for Shamrock and Gracie, these cats get in the ring and Gracie clearly throws a low knee that hits Shamrock in the groin area. But here's the thing, and you got to know this. Ken Shamrock is a pro wrestler. Ken Shamrock also has admittedly done MMA fights that were not legitimate results, meaning the two guys literally cheated the fans and choreographed a fight that was perpetrated to be legitimate. It has happened before. Believe it or not, it happens more than you think when you watch the MMA fights. Not all of them, but there's definitely some guys that can, and they can do it. If you're not afraid to get punched in the face for real, it's very easy for two guys to go out there and take a dive in a UFC fight and nobody ever be the wiser of it. But anyways, part of me thinks that's what happened, because if you watch that fight, Gracie hits Shamrock low once, but Shamrock doesn't register it. Then Gracie hits him a second time and misses him, and Shamrock sells that one and goes down. Then Gracie hits him and nails him a couple times, and the ref stops the fight. As a person who's been involved in professional wrestling for 16 years, my first instinct watching that was the finish was low blow, Shamrock goes down, couple of punches, ref stops the fight, Shamrock gets right up and complains about the low blow, and now you've got a controversial reason for a rematch without ever proving who was the better fighter. Honestly, that's what it looked like to me. That first low blow hit Shamrock, did hit him, for real, but he didn't register the first one. But then the second one doesn't touch him at all, and he registers that one and goes down to the ground. I think that was a work, and I'm not afraid to say it. Either way, it was an awful finish to a fight people looked forward to, and it was that last hour just really screwed the Bellator promotion. I know there's a lot of people that don't get into MMA, so I'm going to be done with this here in a minute, but that was the way I spent my Friday night. And the fights before, the undercard fights, were pretty entertaining, but that last hour may have been the nail in the coffin of Bellator MMA. So speaking of MMA real quick, got a little birdie in my ear over the weekend, looking like it's going to be coming up here late May, it looks like. Sarah McMahon, perhaps, is the opponent upcoming for Jessica I don't know if that's official or not, but Word is that's what it's looking like, and I'll let you guys know when I hear something official about that. But we're going to call this one here. We're going to get rolling. I got Dan Wismar coming in. I got a lot of you guys want to get rolling talking about some other stuff. As comments keep coming in on the Facebook, just got a tweet about the Indians thing. Disagree 1,000%. This is from Mark on Twitter. They have the pitching but will not score enough consistently, the Indians, he says. And then in parentheses, he puts again. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Indians getting rolling. Position players are there. Dan Wismar is going to join me, and we'll talk some Tribe. We'll talk Cavaliers coming out of the break. The end of the Wild thing here in Cleveland. Yeah, Bruce, how about that? Talk about weekend activities. Anthony Davis, who, when you guys ask me, when I go on my little LeBron tangents, and you say, well, J-Rocc, if it's not LeBron, who's the best player in the league? And I said, well, if I was picking a team from scratch, I would definitely have Anthony Davis at the top of the list of players that I would want to take if I got the number 1 draft pick. And I'm talking about now. Obviously, he's got a larger career left than a guy like LeBron. That's not a knock on him. Anyways, my point is I like that dude, and he gave you 59 reasons and 20 more to like that dude yesterday as Anthony Davis went to town. There's some quotes from him coming up in the news here, but he had a day that you don't soon forget. 59 points to 20-plus rebounds went off yesterday for the Pelicans, and that's the stuff that guy is capable of when he is focused. We're going to talk Cavs hoops. We'll talk Indians, so much more coming up with Dan the Man Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland, and that'll be next here after the news. Don't go anywhere. Coming up on the Sports Fix.
There's something kind of about a kid that's never played baseball.
Throwing you the best sports commentary in town. The Sports Fix.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events, Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
I'm Little Teapot, short and stout.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
No, Dad, like this. When I get all steamed up, then I shout, tip me over and
pour me out. This is WWE superstar Roman Reigns. The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Sports Fix listeners, do you tweet? So do we. So tweet with us 24/7 at the Sports Fix CLE. Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. Real time spent making real decisions, creating real victory.
I'm the greatest man in the world!
And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize.
I mean, a really real prize.
Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs.
The trophy's 12 feet high, and it is glorious!
Football, baseball, hoops, you name it, they have it. Plus, they have awesome draft kits and party supplies to make all your preseason activities the envy of everyone. If your league needs a ring, belt, or trophy, or you want to upgrade what you already have, there's literally only one place to go. If you're going to be a fantasy jock, do it right.
It's mine, the most magnificent belt ever created, and it's mine.
With America's Fantasy Sports Superstore, fantasyjocks.com. No football? No problem at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. From their awesome Wing Mondays to every single Cavaliers and Buckeye Hoops games in full HD.
Kyrie supposed to D, goes inside, teardrops it home right down Euclid.
That's way up in there for two.
The excitement never stops. Every day of the week brings a different set of food and amazing drink specials.
And now,
fans, Harry Buffalo North Olmsted is the home for every UFC pay-per-view live on the big screens.
Let's get it all!
And let's not forget their mouth-watering trademark, the Bison Burger.
They sure are good.
Nobody does bison like Harry Buffalo. The perfect combination of healthy and delicious.
Hey there, eat up, y'all. You's as good church-going folk. Y'all deserve a little treat.
What are you waiting for? Get to Harry Buffalo, just outside Great Northern Mall today. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd. Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Visit fantasyjocks.com, your fantasy sports superstore. Championship belts, rings, trophies, and more.
News break.
Good morning, I'm Bob Picozzi. Keep in mind he's only 22. Big things were expected from Anthony Davis when he was selected with the first pick in the NBA draft in 2012. He had a memorable Sunday in Detroit. He pulled down 20 rebounds in a 111-104 New Orleans win. And, oh, yeah, he also scored 59 points.
Shot clock was running down. And I think I did a one dribble side step and just put it up there, and it went in. And I just, like, hit a little chunk of, and I thought in my head, like, man, it might be one of those nights.
Davis, a guest on ESPN Radio's NBA Lockdown Insiders. Davis took 34 shots, and he missed only 10 of them. After clearing waivers, veteran forward David Lee has reached an agreement to sign with the Dallas Mavericks. His contract was bought out by the Boston Celtics. ESPN college basketball insider Jeff Goodman is reporting that LSU senior Keith Hornsby could miss the remainder of the season after aggravating a hernia injury. The Tigers are 16-11 and in danger of missing the NCAA tournament. At 9-5 in conference play, West Virginia is 2 games beyond Big 12 leader Kansas. The 10th-ranked Mountaineers host 13th-ranked Iowa State tonight at 9 on ESPN.
The only thing worse than sitting in traffic is all of the wear and tear your engine experiences from the constant stop and go. So do your engine a favor. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics. Made from natural gas and designed for complete protection. Pennzoil Synthetics.
This is Greg Pruitt, formerly of the Cleveland Browns, and you're listening to The Sports Fix.
Indian fever is catching fire with everyone.
You damn betcha. The first chance I got to play Indians Fever, I'm playing Indians Fever, baby, as the position players, they're getting weighed and measured, and most of them have been there anyway, but they're officially getting there, and the full slate of players for the Indians are getting rolling in spring training. It is officially Indians spring once again, guys, as we get back to the Sports Fix. Speaking of official, I hit the brake, and I think I don't know what made it dawn on me. Sometimes things just click. I hit the brake, and I go, man, I don't think I ever gave the social media information, never gave out the phone number, never even told you guys. I didn't even want to talk to you in the first segment. I was so busy talking to myself, I just left you guys out of the conversation. That ain't how we roll. Welcome back into the Sports Fix. I am J-Rocc, and you are the voice of the show, so do that. Dan Wismar is going to join me on the phone lines, but you can keep the conversation going as always on social media. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Twitter @The Sports Fix CLE, all one word, @The Sports Fix CLE, or me personally @J-Rocc Daddy, JROCC Daddy on Twitter. Instagram, hit me up. It's exactly the same, @J-Rocc Daddy. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. Again, Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Twitter @The Sports Fix CLE or @J-Rocc Daddy. Instagram @J-Rocc Daddy. Email thesportsfix@AOL.com. Phones are not open because Dan Wismar's got them locked up right now. My man from Everybody Hates Cleveland joining us here. Dan, how you feeling this Monday afternoon?
Not too bad, Jerry. Good to be with you. I'm sort of on the tail end of a 4 or 5 day bout with a little bit of a chest cold, cough, so I'll apologize in advance if I'm hacking up a lung here during the show. But I think I'll be all right. Like I said, it's sort of at the tail end of that whole thing. But doing great other than that. And I don't know where you want to start, but I'll just say it sure was fun watching the Cavs take down the Thunder yesterday in convincing fashion.
Sure was. You know what? Let's start with some hoops, and then we'll jump into the baseball here as they're getting rolling, and we've got 6-7 months more. Oh, man, baseball time is upon us. But let's talk some hoops, because yesterday, for those of you listening live, was the big clash, as we were talking about at the beginning of the show, with the Thunder and the Cavs. They came out of the break. You had the Bulls, and there was some questions. How is this team going to look? A couple of good challenges early on, and boy, did they answer them. I mean, I guess, though, before we talk about that, let's start with where we left off. You and I go off the air last week. How is the Cavs roster going to change by the time we talk again? Anderson Varejao ends up being packaged as part of 2 trades, and I have paused for this from several different places. I'm no doubt convinced it's 100% a financial move. I don't think this was anything to do with on the court, especially with the news coming out today, which we haven't even got into, about there's a possibility Channing Frye may not even get to play with the Cavaliers here, as there's a lot of concern about a congenital heart condition that he has that the team was aware of heading in, and that may have been why he wasn't playing the minutes that he was not playing when he was in Orlando. But Cavaliers basically sent out another first-round draft pick and Anderson Varejao to get back Channing Frye. They also included a second-round pick, but it wasn't their second-round pick. I believe it came over from Portland. But still, the Cavs have now bartered off another number 1 pick, and that, I think, is what bothers me every bit as much as I know there's the loyalty aspect to Anderson Varejao. But, man, Cavs continue to trade later for now, which is great, but I have questions about that even more when I wonder what they're even getting in return here in Channing Frye. But what were your thoughts on the trade of Wild Thing, Anderson Varejao?
Well, first of all, you want to wish the guy well wherever he lands. Now, you might want to temper that a little bit now that he's landed with Golden State, but
that's where he landed. I saw it's official.
Let's face it, Jerry. This was a minor transaction, and I guess I have a little bit of concern about giving away a number 1. Although it's nice to be in a position where if you're giving away a number 1, you're going to figure it's going to be the 29th or 30th pick in the draft.
I know.
As opposed to something in the lottery. But, this, you don't want to give away a first-round pick on what, as you say, is essentially a salary dump. And also it's a little bit of an admission that he wasn't in the Cavs' plans. He wasn't in Tyronn Lue's plans. And that had been evident by the minutes he was getting. And also it was evident that, as we've talked a little bit about before, it's tough as hell to come back from a torn Achilles. I mean, it's not a 1-year proposition. It's really more like a 2-year proposition. No. And so it's obvious that the game wasn't quite there, and that the guy doesn't have a lot left in the tank. And, of course, the Only in Cleveland crowd immediately starts having nightmares about Anderson Varejao hitting the game-winning shot in Game 7 of the NBA Finals or something. And my first impression there was that if Game 7 against the Warriors in the Finals is close, the chances of Andy Varejao being on the floor are about a little bit better than you and me being on the floor.
But let me...
for that final shot. But in any event, I think this is really a situation where I don't think we're going to see Andy Varejao contributing very much to the Golden State Warriors. This might have been a little bit of a thumb in the eye, kind of a move on their part. A little poke at the Cleveland Cavaliers. But again, I wish Andy well. He was a hell of a competitor while he was here, when he was in his prime, and like you say, through the good times and the bad. So my overriding sense of it is best of luck to him. Thanks for the memories, Andy, and wish you well.
And you know what? I hear where you're coming from, but I have to be honest. I don't know that I 100% agree. The fact that I guess I hope you're right. I hope that it was to stick a thumb at Cleveland, but I don't think it was. I think they think that's a guy. It doesn't matter. You don't need him to help you win every single game. You've already won an NBA record through the first half of a season. But I think they think that's a guy that can give them whatever little something in the playoff. I would hate to be in the finals and be playing against him. I'm just saying that's the kind of guy that can't give you a full season anymore, but I think he can still give you a couple good ones in a row, and I'd hate to see him on the other side. But the fact that they picked him up made me scratch my head and go, okay, this guy wasn't good enough for your plans for the rest of it. Was strictly financial. It had to be. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. But the fact that he had options and was picked up by the Warriors does give me pause to go, hey, maybe and again, it's not to say I have a problem with them letting him go. Had they gotten something tangible in return. But I wasn't all about the trade without knowing about the heart condition of Channing Frye. I thought Channing Frye is a guy who David Griffin loved when he was with the Suns 6 seasons ago. And we see it all the time. We see guys as fans, as media, other players see guys that they played with. You keep them in your head, and years later, you'll see them say, hey, what about this guy? He was pretty good when we played there. I honestly feel like that's what David Griffin's got with Frye, because to me, Frye is a guy that was never that good defensively to begin with. He can rebound and shoot a bit. He's 39% for his career or so from three-point, but not right now, he's not. And this Channing Frye, without even knowing that he's got heart problems, I wasn't all about bringing him on to be a part of this team to begin with. Now that I looked at we may not have him, that makes you really scratch your head.
Well, what makes me scratch my head is the idea that what you want to add to the team is a one-dimensional guy, and that dimension being three-point shooting.
They want to play a track meet with Usain Bolt.
We talked about it with Kyle Korver. Why, this is not a team lacking in three-point shooters. Right. Especially when I hear, and I didn't know from Channing Frye that much. But I started hearing immediately that he's not much of a defensive player.
Nope.
Never been that impressive on that end of the court.
Nope.
That's what you're going to need to slow down, Draymond Green and some guys like that if you get to the finals. And, I don't know. I question the wisdom of adding a guy that's going to throw threes on a team that has, J.R. Smith and Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving and LeBron James and James Jones and everybody else that stands out at the three-point line and can drain it. So that to me didn't make a lot of sense. And like you say, even if the trade is voided, my understanding is that you don't get your first-round pick back because that was a separate deal.
Right, 2 trades is what it was. Yeah.
So, and like you say, the Cavs knew about it coming in. I guess it's the league that is raising some eyebrows about it and taking their time to do all their due diligence on approving them physically.
But, yeah, it was a 2-part trade. Basically, what the Cavs did was they traded Varejao and number 1 to Portland for a conditional second-round pick and a trade exception, and then traded that second-round pick and Jared Cunningham to Orlando for Channing Frye. So even if that part of the trade got voided, it was a completely separate. It wasn't actually a 3-team trade. It was 2 trades, one after the other. So if they voided that, the Cavs would get Portland's conditional second-round pick back, and they would get Jared Cunningham back, but they would not. It wouldn't affect the Varejao or the first-round pick aspect of the trade. And think about what I don't know if you heard at the beginning of the show, but again, my thought is, like I said with you there, you're trying to run a track meet against Usain Bolt. And I think of all the great rivalries. And I know the Cavs and the Warriors aren't exactly there yet, but maybe we have visions of them meeting up for the next couple of years and kind of being each other's nemesis. I don't ever remember occasions of whether, let's say, Lakers Celtics, since we're talking basketball. I don't remember the Lakers saying, we've got to figure out how to outscore Larry Bird and these guys. No, they figured out how to stop them, how to counter them, how to defend them. And I felt like the Cavs were on that track. They left the playoffs last year, number 1, hands down, best defensive team in the NBA. They continued to play that way and then threw their hands up halfway through the season and changed everything. And I go back to saying, I'm not trying to slam the Cavs, but it all feels very panicky. It feels like a lot of all in towards last season, It didn't pan out because of the injuries. Now, had that not happened, the Cavs very may well have been successful in their all-in in one season. But it feels panicky to me. Now, midway through, you've changed. You said, you know what? This defensive is not going to work. This is not going to work. Instead, we're going to add more runners, and we're going to make our track team faster, and we're going to try to beat them at their own game. And they are proving, they being the Golden State Warriors, are proving to not just be good at that game, but they're proving to be best of all time, perhaps, at that type of game that they're playing. And to me, you're trying to go on somebody's home court. You're trying to learn how to go play their game on their turf when the Cavs were countering. The Cavs were, to me, building defense to counter the best offensive team in the league is the way that you beat them, not trying to get better offensively. Yes, you can improve offensively, but man, you're trying to catch the world's fastest man. Does that make sense?
It does to a certain degree, although I've said before that I don't think that playing an up-tempo game on offense and being a sound defensive team are mutually exclusive. I mean, it's not an either-or proposition. I think the Cavs still know how to play good half-court defense. It's just that I think they may have looked around and said, hey, look, we can play great defense, but the Golden State Warriors are going to score 110 a game, and if we're not the kind of team that can score with them, then we're gonna have limited success. So, like I said, it's not an either or proposition.
True.
We'll find out.
I mean, they did pick it up. What was the number they said yesterday? I think it's 7 points a game. The Cavs' offense is up since the coaching switch. So I mean, clearly,
with essentially the same number of possessions per.
Right.
48 minutes
so
or whatever.
They've definitely gotten more efficient.
A little bit puzzling to me. What that tells me is you're shooting better. If you're scoring more points on fewer possessions, either you're making more threes or you're increasing your percentage, your shooting percentage. So, one or the other is happening because of you're not getting the ball more with your up-tempo offense, but you're scoring more.
That's the head scratcher we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, last week. It'd be one thing if you had increased it like the amount of because of the amount of possessions, but you effectively just increased the effectiveness of what you were already doing. Either way, I mean, we can project out later. Who knows where things are going to go as far as in the playoffs? But the way the Cavs came out of the break, getting back to kind of how we started this conversation, and I agree with you, some of the guys in the chat room there. I mean, you do nothing. Did you see, by the way, the classy letter that Andy left for the city of Cleveland on his way out? Everybody does that nowadays, but you can tell the ones that really, really put it down for themselves and the ones that just had somebody go, hey, thanks for the years in your city. You can tell Andy meant every word of what he said on his way out the door.
Yeah, that's true. And I saw today, too, that Dan Gilbert tweets something to Andy, and I thought, Dan, don't you think it might be worth more than a 140-character message to Andy Varejao for his service to the team? I hope that he did more than tweet him, in terms of expressing his appreciation for what he's done here. No doubt the guy's a longtime fan favorite, and he earned every bit of it, because the reason he's a fan favorite is because he laid it all out there all the time, and effort was never a question with him. So anyway, like I said, it was my hope that hopefully Gilbert did more than sit down and type out a tweet to Andy Varejao.
Right. You would figure that would get you one of those half-page plain dealer, deals where the team is real classy
exactly.
all the way out the door.
One thing I wanted to mention about the basketball game yesterday, though, and I thought really the key to the game seemed to be that, first of all, OKC came out really the whole game and was trying to be physical with the Cavs, bumping them. They were getting away with an awful lot. I mean, on screens, on everything else. They were just laying shoulders into them and
it was
bumping
quite
the Cavs
physical
all over the place.
Yeah.
Very, very physical. And third quarter, I looked up and I noticed with about, it wasn't close to half the quarter. I think it was about 8 minutes to go in the quarter, and the Cavs are in the bonus.
Yes.
Already. And then Kevin Love shoots about 10 free throws the rest of the quarter, racks up the majority of the points, and I think they shot 13 or 14 free throws in the third quarter. That's where they stretched the lead from 7 at the half up to 21 or something at the end of the quarter. But to me, one thing that jumped out at me was that the Cavs did not let that physical nature of the game bother them at all. In other words, obviously they benefited from it by getting to the line 14, 15 times in the third quarter and building that lead at the free throw line. But A, they made the free throws, and B, they didn't do an awful lot of whining about what looked to me like a little bit of a one-sided physical game. We were getting some touch fouls called on us, and they were getting some body shots going uncalled on them. We just kind of said, okay, you want to put us on the line, we'll go to the line. And the Cavs didn't do the typical amount of whining. Although, did you see the little vine of the woman on the sidelines going, suck it up,
LeBron? He said, well, I guess she told me.
That was hilarious. That was really funny. He's doing some typical LeBron whining at the referee, and the lady in the front row goes, suck it up, LeBron.
Suck it up, LeBron. And he said, well, I guess she told me. Yeah,
that was really good. I love those crowd shots.
But, it's funny you mentioned that, because that was one of the points I was going to get to, was the physicalness. That's what I mean. When I talk about the style of the Cavs, that to me is, I think they can be one of the most physical teams in the league. They've got guys with that mentality. They got guys like Shumpert and Smith with that mentality that I don't want to. I'm trying to think of how to say that go get them on defense. On just there's a certain mentality. Some guys play a tougher, more physical in general style, and I think the Cavs have some of those guys. And I liked talking about Kevin Love, watching the game yesterday. There's a couple of times that I just was in heaven watching them dump him the ball in the post, and he just backs his guy down, takes 2 or 3 dribbles down, and puts the ball up and in. I mean, to me, I said this at the beginning of the show. I don't care about styles and coaches and any of that. If you've got LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love plays the way he did yesterday in the playoffs, I don't care how good the other team is. That's just a tough beat, because that is a dominant style there. When Kevin Love is double-digit rebounding and getting his points up there in the 20-point or so range, but they're coming down in the post and outside. And, I mean, the way the Cavs had things moving yesterday, that's all difference-maker stuff right there. But you've got to be willing to do that, too. You have to dump it to him in the post and let him back guys down and play that inside-out type of game, too.
Yeah, that's true. And the other thing that kind of goes unnoticed with this new starting five, which has Thompson and J.R. Smith in it, is you're getting 15 out of both of those guys, on a pretty consistent basis. Not only are you getting 15 out of Thompson, but you're getting 15 and 15,
Right.
And J.R. playing, seems to me, more consistent basketball, hitting the threes more consistently. And he throws in 5 of those a game, and there's his 15 points, and you're getting another double-digit points game out of Thompson almost every night lately. So there's really an awful lot of balance, and that's what. Plus, JR's defense is also underrated, in my opinion. You're getting good defensive effort from him all the time, and steals and a certain amount of rebounding from him too. So you've got 5 very solid contributing starters that are almost always going to be in double-digit points each, and with Love and Thompson, you're getting double-digit rebounds out of both of those guys most of the time.
And you know what, to just back up the point that you made about that point in the third quarter, when you look at the game flow chart of how that game stayed close, it's literally the point halfway through the third quarter where the Cavs got in that bonus so early. That's where the game spreads, and that's where the Cavs really begun to pull apart. And I mean, I call high school ball all the time, and there's sometimes, and there was a game a couple weeks ago where I think the team started the second quarter in the bonus. I'm like, man, how do you play a whole quarter like that? But that's when teams can cut down those big leads. They keep the clock stopped, and the Cavs were nailing those free throws, which was important. Like you said, Kevin Love went, I think he was either 11 or 12, I think he was, and making those free throws. And speaking of defense, I will say this. They held Oklahoma City. OKC still shot like 42% for the game, but from three-point, they held OKC under 23% for the game, while they being the Cavs, hit 44% from three. I mean, on those nights, too, where the Cavs are nailing 40+% of their threes because of pure volume, like you said, because of having all those shooters, that's a tough out right there. That's where you're only going to beat them with a team that can put up those high points. So that's where I wonder about the Cavs getting caught, and it may take another offseason. Now that they've changed their game plan as an organization, they're kind of stuck in the middle. And I know I totally agree with you as far as the mutually exclusive, but they're kind of in that transition. And you can definitely outscore the teams in the East. Don't know if you have enough to outscore the Warriors, but if you can continue to work on that defense, and I will give Coach Lou credit. He keeps harping on it after the games, but they keep not playing the best defense during the game, but he keeps saying, man, we've got to get back to playing defense, because I think he realizes that too. It's easy for even the players to fall in love with running up and down the floor, and you got to get back into that grinded out defensive mentality in the half court.
That is true, and I think, that's the difference between regular season basketball and playoff basketball too. Yes. I mean, I think once you get to the playoffs, it becomes much more of a half-court game. I don't know if the Golden State Warriors buy into that or not, but
they're not playing a half-court game anywhere, brother.
to a certain degree, you can make that happen in the playoffs. And the other thing too about OKC, yeah, they've got a great 1-2 punch. They don't have the 3-4-5 that the Cavaliers have, and that was kind of my point about the balance. Of, if you can force Durant to into some bad shots or hold him under 30 a game, they don't have a lot of other guys that can pick up the slack. Obviously, Westbrook, I still believe, I might be rethinking my best player in the NBA comment of last week, but he had some spectacular plays in that game yesterday in a losing effort. I mean, that one flying dunk that he did. I mean, he's such a little guy, but he gets up so high, and he's a spectacular player when he goes to the hoop. But anyway,
and you know what?
They've got a great 1-2 punch, but they do not have anything like the balance. And I don't think they're going to be a team that's going to hang with Golden State. They're looked at right now, along with the Spurs, as legitimate contenders with the Warriors for the Western Conference. I'm doubting it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I still say where OKC as a franchise went wrong was when they panicked and got rid of James Harden, because they made the decision that we're going to put all our eggs in the Westbrook basket. And I think, imagine had they been able to keep the two of them together. I mean, obviously, maybe, and there was probably other thing. I know Harden wanted to be the guy too, and all of that. But and I watched that development, and I think, and I'm not trying to cast a pall here. Hopefully, the Cavs get this thing done that they're trying to get done. But OKC model is the perfect example of how you can get right on the brink of a championship, not be able to get over the top, and then not even be able to get back to where you were, because that's kind of what happened with them. They were the model franchise. Remember, while the Cavs were down and out for 4 years without LeBron, that was the talk. We're following the OKC model of drafting and developing and building our guys, and we'll hit on the draft. We'll get a couple of first-round draft picks, and that was the way they built that. And they reached a point where they made it to the finals, and then they didn't get the job done. Remember, OK Clee and all of that. And then they've never made it back to the mountaintop. And part of it is, and I think of the Cavs, and we talk about how do you get LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love to all be effective together. That's the same problem that they had. You got some great individual talents. Westbrook, I'm with you. One of the best in the game, no matter, not just talking about point guard. Durant speaks for himself how good he is. But you would think that talent would naturally keep you right at the top of the game, but they haven't even been able to return to the finals since they got there. It shows just how tenuous your grasp is on things, and with the other teams moving around you, because you were thinking, here's a run. OKC's going to be in the finals for the next couple of years. They haven't got back yet.
Well, that's true. Now, they've got a great record. They had a better record than they had going into that game yesterday. But like I said, I don't think that they're, among the, obviously they're one of the top three teams in the West, but I don't think they're going to be able to hang with the Warriors or the Spurs. But again, the other thing that was so impressive about the game yesterday was the Cavs are doing it without Kyrie and without Shumpert. I mean, you're basically going in a little bit hobbled, and Kyrie played a quarter, and I guess flu-like symptoms, is that what they were saying? That he was just not feeling well. I mean, it really was not a physical injury. Am I right?
Right. Oh, yeah, that was what that was. Yeah, for sure. You would.
Yeah. But anyway, no, I just don't think they've got enough after those two guys are just not a deep enough team. People will like the job that Billy Donovan's doing there, coaching wise, and they made a kind of a gamble there to bring in a guy that was a known entity, and not so much a known entity in the NBA, but known to the owner, and people are happy about the job he's done, as well as the other college coaches that are coming in Boston, of course, and one other prominent college coach whose name is escaping me at the moment, besides Donovan and Stevens in Boston. But anyway, it's encouraging to see the Cavs go in there, do it on the road, do it shorthanded, and do it convincingly. I heard somebody say the other day, Jerry, that they didn't think that LeBron had, even yet through 50-some games, had really turned it on all the way, had really been, at 100% of his game, just because he knows he has to sort of, dial it down a little bit, stay healthy through the season, get to the playoffs, and be healthy once he gets there. I think he's starting to crank it up a little bit.
And that's a point I've heard some other people make, too, as well, Dan. By the way, we're crossing over into the top of the hour. Dan Wismar, J-Rocc, talking here on the Sports Fix. Welcome in if you're just tuning in. We've been talking some Cavs. We're going to switch our focus here in a moment, talk some Indians as Indian spring is upon us. Facebook, Twitter, email. Stay in touch with us. Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Twitter @TheSportsFixCLE. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com, Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, Twitter @TheSportsFixCLE. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. And again, my personal Twitter, J-Rocc Daddy, and my Instagram is the same, JROCC Daddy. Just the way it sounds is the way it's spelled. And as we wrap it up with the Cavs, they have a home game here tonight. They've got the Pistons back at the Q. Then I believe they've got a couple of road games coming up here on the schedule. I'm waiting for the schedule to pull up in front of me as we go, but always a good challenge there when Drummond comes in. They've got a great big man there, even though the Pistons right around 500, and that's a squad that I think in the next year or two, by the way, is going to be one that is slowly building itself through the draft, through the younger guys. I kind of like what they're doing there in Detroit.
Oh yeah, Drummond is a huge talent. And you got to figure he's going to get nothing but better. I'm a little bit surprised that they haven't been playing, that they don't have a better record. But, again, when you look at this Cavs team and you watch them play every night, and you see the rest of the NBA, I don't know, there's a lot of mediocrity out there. Every team's got a great player or two, but I don't know. I said the last week, I think, that I feel obliged to watch this team all the time just because at 40-14, we haven't seen a lot of Cleveland teams playing 740 percentage, ball in this town for a long time, and it's just a pleasure to watch them. And by contrast to every other team, you can pick out their flaws, and you see a lot of mediocrity on the floor in the NBA around the league.
Well, yeah, I think Indiana's a good basketball team. I love Paul George's comeback. They're 10.5 games back in second place in the division from the Cavs. And I said at the beginning, I still think the Bulls are the second best team in the conference as far as when it gets down to the playoffs. I think that they'll be the last team that the Cavaliers face, depending on how the bracket goes. They're 8th in the conference. I don't buy the standings. I don't care. I'm not. Toronto's better, but you see how they went down last season. The East is the Cavs and everybody else. And you'd be fooling yourself if you didn't see. You're a Cavs hater, LeBron hater, whatever, if you would be looking at that and not seeing that. It's just clear as day, the delineation. Now, there is a lot of competition from 2 to 10 in the East for sure, but the gap between the Cavs and number 2 to me is a lot. I know it's only 4 games in the standings or whatever between Toronto and Cleveland, but I think Ty Lue knew what he was talking about. I had a buddy say, "Oh man, this guy's kind of arrogant talking about we're going to clinch the division and then give LeBron 5 or 10 games off." I said, actually, that's what they should do. They need to go on a sprint for the next 3 weeks and try to lock this conference up, and then they can spend the last 5 or 10 games getting everybody rested and healthy, because they are in a position, I think, where they can put the final kind of chokehold on this conference with Toronto if they go on a strong 8-10 game winning streak here coming out of the break.
Yeah, that's true. And like you say, Chicago is probably better than their record right now because, they hit a real bad streak. They had some health problems, some injury problems, and lost 7, 6, 7, 8 in a row.
In a row, yeah.
Won their last 2, and they're only 3 games over 500. But and like you said, I think they're sitting in the number 8 spot and would be the Cavs' first round opponent. But yeah, there looks right now that they are better than their record shows.
I'll tell you what, if that's the way it breaks down, I feel sorry for the ratings of the Eastern Conference playoffs, because to me, that's the only team, and then there is no team in the East that's going to beat the Cavs in the playoffs. That's not being Cleveland cocky. That's how big the gap is to me between the Cavs and everybody else. If the Cavs play the Bulls in the first round, that's like shooting all your bullets in the first 2 minutes, because there's no anticipation at that point. At that point, the Cavs are going to cakewalk through the rest of the schedule. So I think just for, if you're the NBA, you're selfishly hoping the Bulls get up into 7 or 6, because if they end up with the Cavs and the Bulls in round 1, that's your best potential playoff matchup done in the first round.
Yeah, in terms of a compelling matchup for fans.
That's what I mean.
You're right. Anything after that, whether it's the Pistons or the Bucks or the Pacers or whoever it is, you're not looking at high ratings.
And I'm looking at the schedule real quick as we wrap up on the Cavs. They've got Detroit, they've got Charlotte, then they hit the road for a couple. Toronto, the aforementioned Raptors there, Washington, Indiana and Washington back at the Q, Boston and Memphis. So they've got a run here after Charlotte, and even after Detroit here, which is still in the bottom of the standings. But you've got Toronto, Washington, Indiana, Washington, Boston. I mean, these are all the teams that'll be coming through. So this is where the Cavs can make that run. And I think if they do, by the time they come back from that West Coast trip, I think we'll have an idea of how much or how lack of much rest LeBron and company will be able to get down the stretch. I think when they come back from that West Coast trip, they got the Lakers, the Clippers, the Jazz. At that point, I think they've got about 10, 12 games left in the season, and we'll have a good idea for how close they are or aren't to locking up first place in the conference.
Yeah, you're right. Just that one more West Coast trip remaining is the big, possibility of hitting a point where you stumble a little bit. Although the teams aren't there out there, the Kings and the Lakers are not the best. But like you say, you hope that LeBron can get some rest, and really everybody else too. Kind of sort of been holding your breath all year long watching Kyrie play, and all you can wish is that he goes into the playoffs healthy, and every time he takes a stumble, I kind of hold my breath. But LeBron's not the only one, as I say, that is going to need some rest down the stretch.
And I'll tell you what, you just touched on something. I'm glad that I didn't blow past this, because I wanted to mention as well this morning, if you guys noticed, the reports starting to come out, Mo Williams really starting to be some concern within the Cavs about his knee situation and the tendonitis. And so that's something important, because you can't stress what a good job Mo Williams did when he was the guy stepping in for Kyrie in the beginning of the season. Cavs offense didn't miss a beat for the most part, and Mo was playing very well. Start looking at the playoffs, you start talking about injuries, you start thinking about last year. That was why signing Mo Williams was one of the best things the Cavs did in the offseason. So you hope that everything, and this is where the depth comes in, being able to rest him, having Delly be able to pick up the slack, because I don't want to go into the playoffs again with Delly is the primary backup guard and then the depth drops off. I mean, that was the point of having all three of those guys.
Yeah, and I think it remains to be seen, Jerry, whether Mo Williams' minutes are a function of a sore knee or a function of Ty Lue not being a Mo Williams guy. I don't think we really know that yet. Like I said, we'll see, and it's never a good idea when you're going to have an appointment with a surgeon about your knee. Obviously, he's an orthopedic surgeon, and going to see Dr. Andrews, never a good sign. But like I say, he does give him great depth, and I also think, though, that a year later from last year's playoffs, when basically Delly became the guy, that Delly's a better player right now than he was a year ago. Would you not agree?
Oh, for sure. What I would think that's going to be a most improved player of the year conversation for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. And so I don't feel as bad about Delly being the guy. When he's not the guy because he's the backup point guard and not Kyrie Irving's replacement in the starting lineup, as he was for the majority of the playoffs. But I also think he's a better player today, and certainly a better shooter today. than he was a year ago, and I don't have the same trepidation about him having an important role. But, yeah, you'd like to see Mo Williams. But I guess my point being that it seemed as though Mo Williams' minutes dropped off when Tyronn Lue took over, and not sure if that was just because they knew that his knee was barking at him or whether Tyronn Lue lacks confidence in him.
You got it. We're talking about the Cavaliers with Dan Wismar, and I want to shift gears here a bit and switch over to the Indians. Indians spring here as today. Position players, the ones that weren't there, everybody's there now. Everybody's getting their caps and sleeves measured at this level, and they're getting ready to play some ball because a week from today, Grapefruit League ball plays, Cactus League, whichever you're in, and we're rolling. Man, how do you feel about the Indians since we last talked? We were debating, were they going to grab one of these free agent third basemen? They did. Juan Uribe comes into Cleveland on a one-year deal. Heard it's going to be around $5 million or so. We talked off the air, but go ahead and lay it on me on the air. What were your thoughts as you heard that? I mean, we knew they were going to want to do something to anchor down third base. I know you may have been looking more towards staying within the farm system, but what did you think when you heard Juan Uribe come into Cleveland?
Oh, I think you have to look at it as a positive. First of all, everybody says he's a great clubhouse guy. And, you know, if nothing else, he'll be a guy to mentor and work with the two young third basemen that the Indians have in the organization. And as far as Andy Diaz goes, who knows about Andy Diaz? He's a guy who hit .315, but he hit it at Akron last year. He only played a handful of games, even in Columbus last year. So he has yet to play at the AAA level, even to prove himself there. I think we're maybe looking at him certainly as more of a 2017 prospect than a this year kind of prospect. But and who knows? Like you said earlier, J-Rocc could come in and have a great camp and be knocking the ball around and give the Indians a lot of hope for his long-term prospects. But when you're paying a veteran, a 37, 36-year-old. Uribe $5 million. He's going to be your starter opening day, and he's going to be your starter for 2016 until something happens, good, bad, or ugly. I think you just got to like it. He 14 or 53 homers and RBIs last year. I think he hit 256 or something like that. So
yeah,
he's not going to be Wade Boggs out there, but
hey,
he's solid defensively, and they say he's a great guy to have in your clubhouse. And this team needed to get older, and it needed to get. There's all kinds of debate about whether the team needed to get more right-handed in terms of its lineup. Right. But basically, the three players that they've added, in Napoli and Roger Davis, and now in Juan Uribe, all three are right-handed hitters. All three have a little bit of pop in the bat. And so you got to believe that the lineup certainly is going to be more balanced, and it's going to have, more power, presumably, if guys live up to their career numbers than we had a year ago. And when you've only got one guy on the team that's hitting even as many as 18 homers, as I believe Santana was the team leader last year with 19, maybe 18, 19.
Right.
You need a little bit of pop, whether it comes from the right or the left side. So they've gone out and added right-handed bats with a little bit of power and some run production. And now I don't know. To me, like you, I was a little bit shocked to see the Las Vegas odds at 9-5 for the Indians to win the Central.
Yeah.
We also, you don't have to have that good a memory to remember them on the cover of Sports Illustrated a year ago as being the team that was going to win the World Series before they went 81-80. So. We've learned to take that kind of stuff in stride here and be, at least at heart from Missouri. Show me.
Show me. I was going to ask you about the odds there in a moment, but yeah, with Uribe, going back to him, I mean, even with the, I get you with the number 256, 14, and whatever. That's still 10 more or 8 more home runs than you had at the position there with Ursha. I mean, it's still a better bat there, and I'm with you. You look at the veterans that they added, the three guys. Some people say, typical Dolan stuff. I disagree. Maybe not the free fall, windfall that you wanted spent, but they did spend a little more money than they traditionally do. But it's not just that. I mean, to me, what I clearly see them doing is adding a couple of veterans to a very young team, thinking that that's what they need to get these young guys over the top. And basically, they spent the last year replacing the group of veterans that they thought was going to be that group with this now new group of veterans here. You had to get rid of the mistakes in Swisher and Bourne, and you had to go down that path. So now they've replaced those guys. As we said, you got Napoli and Davis, and now Uribe here. Those three guys, I think the Indians think, with the pitching that they had, which is, I think, even deeper coming in than it was last season, especially when you look in the bullpen. And I want to talk to you about that in a minute, but I guess that's where the optimism from some people outside coming in. I feel good. I mean, I know I feel good every freaking spring about the Indians, but I really do feel good about this club coming into this season. I did last year, and they got me again. I'm hoping that they don't. But I will say this, if this club avoids the crappy start, they'll be there until the end. I do believe that, because I think that the pitching, especially the bullpen, let's go there for a minute, because that's what we've seen for the last week is the pitching get rolling out. And you look at the guys, I like the wave of guys that are going to come in near the end of April, beginning of May, when you look at Stammen and Hunter and a couple of guys that are banged up, that are going to take a month or two after the season starts. I like that, because Terry Francona's got a good dozen arms or so to look at here and get together. Then he'll have some reinforcements just waiting to come in. I really think that the bullpen is going to be a huge place of strength for the Indians this year to back up that pitching staff.
Well, certainly the numbers are there, like you said. I just hope that Francona has already sort of acknowledged this spring that he probably didn't give some guys enough work last spring. He took it a little bit too easy and a little bit too conservative with the Brian Shaws and the Cody Allens because they had made so many appearances the year before, that he was a little bit gun-shy about working them real hard in the spring, and admitted recently here I saw that may have been a mistake, that maybe they weren't quite as sharp as they needed to be when the season started. Certainly Brian Shaw wasn't. He regained the form as the season went along, I think, is fairly demonstrable. But clearly he didn't have as good a start as he could have. I just hope that Francona, gives all these guys a shot, is able to get them all enough work, and so when he does break camp, that he's got, his best 8 guys in that bullpen, or 7 or 8 guys, and that I think the starting rotation is pretty much set. There's still some things up in the air about who the 5th guy is going to be, whether it's going to be Tomlin or whether it's going to be Cody Anderson or someone else perhaps. He even threw out McAllister's name as a candidate for it, and a lot of people were scratching their heads about that given the options that they have, McAllister doesn't seem to be a real likely prospect for the 5th spot in the rotation, barring injury. Again, to me, the biggest drama is going to be who's going to be our guys from the left side. Presumably Kyle Crockett will be there, but after that, you don't know. You've got some veterans, Gorzolandi, Thatcher, and a couple of young guys, Soto, prominently. But that, to me, where the question can come in. And then, like you said, we won't see Tommy Hunter until May, but we're going to see Tommy Hunter because he's got a major league deal.
And he's one that I'm really interested in seeing as well, And we talked about when they signed Stammen. I'm kind of curious to see what he can add to that. But I like the breakdown.
I'm a big Austin Adams fan too. And
yes, we liked him last year.
I hope he doesn't get overlooked in the big numbers game, because I think he can help this team too. Just a power arm for your 6th, 7th inning. It's homegrown, and I hope he doesn't get crowded out of the picture.
But you know what? I think too much can be made of who makes the starting bullpen with this team, because as we saw, the Indians aren't afraid to send you an email every day saying we brought somebody up, moved somebody back down. We say, and they're not afraid to utilize every arm, not just in the bullpen, but in the organization if need be. They'll bring them up for a game. They'll bring them up for a week, whatever they need to do. So being this deep, I mean, the first 4 or 5 guys at AAA are going to be every bit as important as the last 1 or 2 guys at the major league level. I mean, we know that. And Terry Francona is setting records. He's breaking his own records every season for bullpen use. So he's clearly the master at playing those games back there. And I'm really interested to see, because I think that We saw it. I mean, the strength of this team is going to be there, and if this offense can build itself around that, then I do. And I'm curious, you brought up those odds and the Las Vegas sports book that we mentioned, putting the Indians to win the division ahead of the Royals, who, they didn't do anything but win the World Series last year. But what do you think just looking from the outside, what do you think would be the reason that they would look at the Indians from the outside? And this isn't even a sports thing. This is the gambling sports book. What would make them look at the division, do you think, and say, hey, I think the Indians are the best? Well, besides the fact that they are supposed to try to take your money. So that may be why they set the odds the way they did, to try to get some people to not put their money on the Royals. But what would you think? Would an outsider look at the Indians and say, that's the team to beat? Is it because of the depth of pitching?
I think so. I think you can fairly say almost every season that the teams with the best starting pitching are the two teams that end up in the World Series. And who picked the Mets last year to be in the World Series? No one. And, why did they make it? Because they had the best starting pitching. And I think, it's arguable that the Royals also had the best starting pitching in the American League. I don't think they did. I think maybe at the end of the season you could safely say the Indians did. But I think you just got to look at that and say that over time and on balance, usually the team with the best starting pitching is a team that goes the farthest. And the Indians have quality and depth in starting pitching, and that has got to be the single biggest factor. That and the fact that they have done some things to bolster the offense in the off season. They might be little things, but they are multiple things, okay? And that they saw the way that the Indians closed and the way they finished and got better as the season went along. A full season of Francisco Lindor, all those things, a full season, hopefully, of healthy Yan Gomes, who may be the biggest key to the successful season for this team. And all those factors combining to say, okay, this might be the year when they get enough offense to help out that great starting pitching staff.
Dan Wismar with us here on the Sports Fix. You guys, the conversation continues to roll. I had somebody ask us on Twitter here. I'll pose this to you while we're talking, Dan, about the Indians and the offseason, the moves they did and didn't make. I was asked, just for the sake of discussion, if the Tribe had moved a pitcher in the offseason, which one would you have moved and gotten the best return? I said that I would not have. I'm not a big fan of trading pitching in general. You can never have too much. Bauer was the only one that I was really interested in even hearing his name out there. I am not a fan of moving a guy and for the next 6 or 7 years hearing Danny Salazar pitching for the Royals or whoever and going out there and winning some Cy Youngs without us. But it posed a question to you. If they would have moved one, which one would you have wanted them to move?
Well, like you, the one who would have brought them the least in return.
Exactly.
And so you've got to trade something to get something. If you're going to go get Jorge Soler or whatever from the Chicago Cubs, you're going to need to give him Danny Salazar. You're going to need to give him Carlos Carrasco. You're going to probably need to get some more back in return. But if you're going to go out and get a young, under team control for multiple years, power-hitting corner outfielder, then they're going to want one of your top 3 starting pitchers in return. And I agree with you. I wasn't ready to give up any of the big 3. Carrasco, Kluber, Salazar. And not only are they young and all 3 of them among the top 20 or 30 starting pitchers in baseball right now by everybody's ranking, they're under team control for at least 3 years apiece, which is even more important. They are bargains at what they're getting paid, and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. And they are the envy of the rest of Major League Baseball. So, I think we did the right thing by standing pat and holding on to our the great situation that we're in, which is not only having all that talent, but having it under team control for multiple seasons looking out in the future.
Couple of other questions coming up here as the teams are getting into spring training here. I saw some of the talk about first base. I saw Hoynesy talking a little bit about some of that in the Plain Dealer over the weekend. You've got Santana, you've got Napoli, one of those veterans that we mentioned being brought in, and Terry Francona was asked who's going to get the majority of the play. He says it's going to be the best defensive first baseman. If that's the case, you got to figure Napoli's going to play at least 120 or so over there at first base, because he was a much better defensive first baseman and offensively as well for the most part. But do you think that sounds right? Who do you think ends up being the everyday first baseman when this thing shakes out?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt it'll be Napoli. I will say that I thought as the season wore along last year that Santana, did better, got to the point where he wasn't terrible. In other words,
got to the point where he wasn't terrible.
Low bar to get over, obviously. But I thought he became a passable, acceptable defensive first baseman by the end of the season. But again, I think Napoli's going to, hopefully he'll be in there and be healthy and be playing 120 games at least, and you give him a break once in a while. But you want to DH him from time to time or whatever, just to give him a rest. But I think there's no doubt that he's going to be your guy.
Yeah, and he's one that Mike Brandenberry and I definitely disagree on. I think Napoli's going to. Surprise some people. He's not going to come in here and be Babe Ruth, but I think he's going to definitely give the Indians their money's worth this season. And that's the biggest difference. I think that is what the Indians have. Think about it. The year they made the playoff run, and you had Giambi and all of that. What have they been missing the last couple seasons? You can give me a lot of sarcastic answers, but the places that they've fallen the most short is the veteran contributions to the roster. You know what I mean? And the guys that they had positioned and bookmarked for that for the last couple of years did nothing. And then they were the ones dumb enough to continue to sell themselves on, well, this year, Swisher and Bourne are going to bounce back and do more. But, I mean, I honestly believe that that's what the Indians have been missing the last two seasons, and they've still been 500 slightly competitive teams, and that's missing that extra step over the top. So if these guys can just be decent, they don't even have to be great. If they can just be decent, I think that goes along to why would somebody give the Indians good odds? Because I think people see that they were banking on the wrong veteran contribution to supplement the rest of their team. And I think if they get that from Napoli, Davis, and Uribe, that's the difference maker between 85 and 90 wins, between missing and making the playoffs. So they got to hope that they hit it right on these. And I think they've got good odds that I think at least one or two of these three are going to be plus players for the Tribe this season. Maybe that's where my optimism comes in. But am I wrong to see it as I think that's what's been missing the most is the holes from those dead spots in the lineup that were your veteran contributions?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And I think one of the problems with the Indians over the last few years, and you see it every offseason, you see, and Shapiro used to say it explicitly, we're trying to get older. Young teams don't win World Series. Teams with a bunch of rookies and second and third year players do not win championships. And so, Shapiro would say it most every offseason. We're trying to get older. We need to, sign and groom veteran players. Like you said, they've tried to do that and they've fallen on their face in many cases. But that doesn't mean that the rule doesn't still hold, that you need to have veterans on your team, both the clubhouse and just experience and in postseason play. This team needs to get older. You can't keep bringing up Francisco Lindors every year and have a couple of first-year players every year. And granted, some of the players on the Indians, not as young as they were 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, you've got veterans now in Brantley and Kipnis and people like that on the roster that are no longer can be considered, quote unquote, young players. But I just think it's still a truism that you need to get older and veteran teams win. And the Royals sort of became veterans as a group, much like the mid-'90s Indians did. Came up as young talents and grew together, and it took them several years before the Hosmers and Gordons and all those guys became the veteran leaders that they did become. And to a certain degree, they're still young. They're still not past their primes. But, you're right. You still need to bring them in, and you need to get lucky. You need to have your Uribes and Napoli's be productive for you and be better than the Bourne and Swisher experiment. So I think you can say, well, the Indians are just going back to the playbook. Well, yeah, they are, because it's the playbook that you need to be in to win. You just need to be right about the pieces that you plug in.
And speaking of pieces to plug in, that's the perfect segue to my last little Indian subject here I want to talk to you about. We know Michael Brantley still recovering, and actually his progress went from slowing down a bit in the offseason to now getting ahead of pace. He's on the he was at the tee, getting the bat swinging, I think, a few days earlier than the Indians thought. Still a lot of questions about when he comes back, but filling holes is going to be key, because whether it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, it's going to be, I think actually, unless he has a setback, we may even see Michael Brantley before the calendar flips over to May, although the Indians will be cautious, of course, but the key is going to be plugging those holes. Who do you think gets who are the three that get the first crack at being the starting outfield for the Tribe? I mean, I think most people are looking at our man, perhaps Babraham Almonte, and obviously Rajai Davis is going to be a piece of that. Chisenhall probably gets the first crack. You think those are the three?
I really do think those are the three, unless they surprise us and sign an Austin Jackson. A lot of banter about that here the last several days, and so that would be nice. You put him in center field instead of Almonte, but I thought Almonte showed you enough last year at the end to at least not feel like you're hurting yourself there too badly to have him starting in center field until Brantley gets back. And again, I don't know then what happens with Brantley if he goes to center or if he stays in left. And I don't know if Rajai Davis can play center field. I'm not sure who your center fielder is even when Brantley gets back. But I would anticipate that Chisenhall is going to start in right field. And you've got some other wild cards. People have been talking about Tyler Naquin. People have been talking about James Ramsey.
I like Joey Butler
and other kinds. There are options, and somebody could jump up and have a big spring. Or Ramsey could have a big spring, or so one of those guys could jump up as a corner outfielder and try to at least make it a tough decision when it comes time to come north.
I like Joey Butler, and I liked Terry Francona's explanation of his hopes for him, because the guy he's one of those spree hitters that can get hot and stay there for 6 weeks at a time or whatever. And I think that's what the Indian, that's his shot. If he gets hot in spring training, I think that he comes out of camp with a spot on this team, because Terry Francona kept talking about how that's the kind of guy that can get on a run like that, and they want to take advantage of it, because I think that's the key too. It's the teams that make it to the end. They don't just have, of course, they've got their main guys that contribute all season long, but then there's always that guy or two who gave you that key 6 weeks or whatever that lifted you up. And I'll tell you, I liked the little bit that we saw with the Rays, and obviously he's a guy that they think something about. But you got him. Who else did they sign in the offseason? You mentioned a couple of guys. Cal Gill is another one. There's a lot of names that are out there.
Yeah, and that's what spring is for, Jerry, and that's why I love watching them. A week from today, a week from tomorrow, they're playing the Reds. Do they have a game on the 29th?
No, the first game is the first. The first game is the first.
March 1st is Tuesday.
Yes.
So, that'll be the Reds. They have a couple games at the Reds Tuesday or Wednesday, as I understand it. And, as soon as we can see them on TV, I'll be glued to it, because I'm going to want to see the Cowgills and the Joey Butlers and the, obviously the new acquisitions, Davis, Napoli, and these guys. It's always an exciting time of year. But, the outfield doesn't look like a division-winning combination. But you never know if they get there with Brantley, Davis, and some combination or some platoon in right field. Napoli last year played, a dozen games in the outfield, too. Yes. And he might be a guy to put in your lineup against certain left-handers. Maybe you're going to put Carlos Santana at first base for those games and put a Napoli in right field and field a right-handed heavy lineup against, say, the White Sox, who you're going to throw 4 lefties at you.
And I know some Tribe fans that are just always looking at the negative are not going to like this, but I think it's a great thing. This, to me, feels like a Terry Francona roster. If you know what I mean by that, he is a plug-and-play guy. He likes the versatility. He likes to be able to have a guy move 6 different places. He's got a whole roster full of guys that are all 2-3 position guys. Obviously, some of them have a strong suit at one, but he's got I call it a Terry Francona roster where you can wake up every day and play the best combination for that day. I really do feel like that is the group of players in general the Tribe's got. Do they all play it at the same, does it all come together? That's what the season's for. But it feels like they've put together exactly the type of roster that fits into the type of manager that you have, which is obviously a smart thing to do.
Yeah, that's true. And let's say you have Abraham Almonte in your lineup in center field. If you're DHing the Santana, and maybe you've got Jose Ramirez over at third base, you've got 4 switch hitters in your lineup too. Talking about your versatility,
right?
With Lindor and Ramirez both switch hitting. Almonte and Santana both being switch hitters too. So you really have a lot of different options you can go with lineup wise. With that many switch hitters in your lineup.
I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you, my man. It'll be fun. It all starts, as you said, they're doing a week of practice, and then the games kick off a week from today, and we'll get to watch this thing go. 3 o'clock is the first pitch a week from tomorrow, March 1st, the Reds. And then there's, like I said, about 30 of those bad boys to go. And then we are, next thing you know, Boston at at Progressive Field, which, by the way, I saw the new scoreboard driving past the field the other night. They had it on like a flash mode or something. And if you come over the bridge there in downtown Cleveland, they've got the lights on the bridge now where they've got their underneath the archway of the main bridge coming across. So right. I'm used to seeing those lights on one side. I start seeing red and blue flashing on me from the other side. I had to look and make sure I'm not getting pulled over, and they had the stadium on flash, but you could kind of see it as you're coming through, and I'm like, okay. Obviously we've seen the pictures of it as it went in, but hopefully they score some runs to put on that. But that is a nice looking scoreboard. Man, I go back to remembering as a kid, and I just don't know why this memory's in my head, but I remember seeing a picture in the Plain Dealer before a football season of them building that scoreboard that ended up being there for the last 10 years or whatever at Cleveland Municipal Stadium, and how cutting edge it was as they're putting the WHK logo on the side and all those things, and it had the dot matrix graphics. Remember the Indians had like those awesome dot matrix graphics of the TP and the guy stoking the fire and all that stuff. Those were like awesome. Yeah. But as a kid, I remember Art Modell on the news talking about how he paid for it and he's building this scoreboard, and they put that in. It's so different now, because now it's these giant cutting edge. I mean, it's just an 8,000-foot 4K television, Yeah,
exactly. They're going to do the same thing as they did at Brown Stadium, and the scoreboards now at Brown Stadium are spectacular. And it looks like it's going to be about the same size. I mean, it stretches end to end from the bleachers, but it looks like the whole thing is going to be digitized instead of having, plastered with advertisements on top, bottom, and both sides, leaving a little rectangle in the middle for display. Looks like now the whole thing is going to be displayable, and I'm sure the ads will be there too in digital form, but you'll have the capability of using the whole scoreboard to do displays or video or whatever you're doing.
Obviously they can never bring them back because I think they're just completely not politically correct anymore. But I just used to love those, man, when they, the bases would be loaded and they'd have the guy stoking the smoke signals and all of that stuff, man. Those were great.
Indian Uprising. Yeah,
Indian Uprising, yes.
It's not quite as acceptable to use that terminology as it used to be.
No, not anymore, man. I mean, they literally used to have the chief with the one feather sticking off his head and a hatchet in his hand.
You had Wahoo. Wahoo was everywhere. Anymore, Jerry, it's hard to find a Wahoo in that stadium, and unless the players are wearing the caps.
I know.
They have Wahoo on the uniform sleeve, but as far as using the Wahoo logo as the identifier for the team, it's hard to find it in that stadium anymore.
Oh, you're absolutely. Oh, yeah. Well,
you just don't see it. I mean, they went with that script eye for a while, and they used that on the caps a little bit, and they use that more as the identifier than they do the Wahoo anymore. They've really, over years, you can see a concerted effort to phase it out, and some people are happy about it, others not so much, but there's no doubt that the team is de-emphasizing it and moving away from it.
I agree. And as I look to my right, it's sitting right here. I stick to my guns that if they ever replace the Chief, they should just buy the rights to use the ball from Major League and just use the mohawked smiling Indian there from Major League. I just watched that the other day, to kick off spring training. I popped that thing on the other night, and I had my son dying because they couldn't even enjoy the movie because I know every single sentence, every single syllable that's announced in the movie. So they can't even sit there and watch. Finally, I had to look over. I go, it is no fun watching this with me, is it? He goes, no. You know everything, and you say it 5 seconds before it comes on the screen. I said, I can't help it. I can't watch this movie without saying, I don't know what it is. I'm sure we all have it. But, yeah, my kids are like, geez, you really do know every single. I said, yes, I do. It's only the greatest baseball movie of all time.
Oh, well, there's lots of movies like that my kids don't want to watch with me.
Oh, yeah, me too, brother. Me too, sure.
I narrate it for them a little bit too much.
Right.
Anyways,
I'm the same exact way. So at least we got some baseball going to talk about. Cavs are rolling into playoffs. We're going to hit March Madness. Hey, even the NFL, you and I over the next couple weeks, we're about to flip over into March. I guess we should put our responsible hats on and start looking at some draft guys, some quarterbacks, and some different things for the Browns. I think 2 more weeks, and the league calendar will flip over. And right away, by the way, not going to dwell on this much, but did you hear the news? I think it's interesting with that the police apparently got the footage from down in Dallas of Johnny Manziel, and they're going to press charges. And I'm like, boy, I am just so glad that the end of that circus is beginning to come to an end for the Browns. While at the same time, I talked to some people, and I'm just going to say, I don't know this officially or not, but I would say the odds are looking at least 80% that Josh Gordon gets reinstated by the NFL. At least that is the belief that I'm hearing from some people in Berea. And the Browns, while they're cautious about it, they're moving forward with the plans that while they may be losing, obviously, one guy, they may be getting another one back in a similar situation. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, we haven't talked a lot about that, but I had a guy yesterday, oh, man, who cares, this guy, that, and I keep going to the fact that the problems that cost him to be suspended are no longer in play because the NFL has changed the rules of that game as far as marijuana and drug testing, and the things that would have caused him to be suspended wouldn't even exist had that test come along now instead of 2 years ago. I don't worry at all. I worry whether he's still as good as he used to be. I don't worry at all about him getting continually resuspended again because I just think his circumstances have completely changed.
Well, that may be, Jerry, and what my understanding is this, that the league has changed their policy, but I also heard the other day, and I can't remember if it was Tom Reed or who it was writing about the Gordon situation, who said that even if Gordon comes back, and first of all, I think it's ridiculous that once a player has, first of all, you can set aside for a minute the fact that pot use in general in our country has been decriminalized and more accepted and less egregious a penalty, for Joe Blow on the street than it has ever been. It's less important. It is frowned on less by society than it ever has been in the past. And that's really all that Josh Gordon has ever been guilty of. Josh Gordon didn't smack around his girlfriend. Josh Gordon didn't, do heroin. He's, as far as I know, he's never been charged with any drug more serious than marijuana. And I also know that once you get into this drug protocol in the NFL, you are subjected to crazy kinds of testing requirements. I mean, when I read that Josh Gordon was tested randomly 70 times over 2 years.
Yeah.
Basically 1 out of every 10 days. Okay, if you want to look at it that way, he was submitted to a drug test. that's nutty in the first place. I heard that now, there's a formula where a player can basically, after you stay clean for a certain amount of time, you go out of that protocol, you go back to as if you had, clean slate, 0 offenses, start over in terms of your, and most NFL players, it is my understanding that most NFL players get tested for drugs 1 time a year. It's very predictable. It's right in August, a couple of weeks prior to the season starting. That's the rest of the season, the other 11 and a half months of the year, players, if they're not already in the program, can basically do whatever they want in terms of recreational drug use and without concern about being tested. So obviously Gordon doesn't have that. One thing we know about Josh Gordon is that he stayed in great shape. We saw the pictures of him working out with Terrell Pryor last year and some other guys, and he continues to be ripped and in fantastic physical condition. More power to him. I'm glad to hear that. But getting back to it, from what Reed said, I believe it was Tom Reed in the Plain Dealer, said that even with this new changed policy by the league, Gordon will still remain in the protocol and will still be subject to random testing whenever they feel like it, and is one positive test away from another indefinite ban. So it's not as though, even being clean this time he'll be out of the woods. He'll still be subject to that random testing. He'll still be subject to, one more strike and you're gone for good, and this time I'm sure he would be gone for good if there is one more test. But I'm just based on everything I've heard, I'm encouraged that he's stayed clean and that he's stayed in great shape and that he wants to play some more. He wants to play here. And his free agency has been pushed back a year. He didn't get credit for the NFL service time of the year that he was suspended, so he's not going to be a free agent until after this coming season, if I understand it right. So, I'm optimistic that he'll be able to, certainly if he's in uniform and on the field, he can help his team.
I will say this. I can definitely see a situation a year from now where the fans and media of Cleveland don't like Josh Gordon anymore, and that's because one of the reasons that I think if they do reinstate him that it's a good thing for the Browns is, number one, he walks in as good as any wide receiver they have, but that free agency deal, the fact that he's going to have the chip on his shoulder because he was already supposed to be a free agent. He was supposed to get paid a year ago, and losing that year of service time means he, in his mind, has to do another year under that contract before he gets his big payday. He's going to want to get paid. It means he's going to put in the work. And I know that sounds selfish, but that's the way a lot of these guys think of it. I think he's in prime for a free agency season, and so I think that he'll do well on the field if he gets there for the Browns, but I can see a year from now Browns fans not liking him anymore because then all of a sudden he's not going to remember the team that kept him at bay while he was doing all of his screwing up, and he'll quickly want to go somewhere else and get paid. I can definitely see that, but it can be a plus for the Browns, especially. I mean, Hugh Jackson's deal is offense. He's an offensive coordinator. He's very gifted at scheming for talented players. That's a piece of talent that I would like to see Hugh Jackson get to work with. I mean, the more tools you give him, the better. And I think that would be a good one because I'd put Josh Gordon physically up with most of the receivers that Hugh Jackson worked with in Cincinnati as well. I really like Sanu and obviously A.J. Green, but I'll put Gordon up there with any of the other ones.
Oh, I would too. Certainly physically he's shown enough to show us that. And let's face it, if Josh Gordon a year from now has some axe to grind with the Cleveland Browns in terms of his treatment by them, then he can go away and I won't regret him being gone. Because if there's one thing you can say for sure about Josh Gordon is that he has been his own worst enemy, and his decisions and his behavior has been the cause of every ounce of trouble he's ever had. So, he's got no fingers to point when it comes time to take account of the situation now or a year from now.
I was just saying, I could see if he has a strong season, I could see that.
Oh, sure.
That free agent situation.
And certainly, if he decides to be a free agent, then the fans will turn against him like they turn against. T.J. Ward and everybody else that ever left this team as a free agent.
Absolutely. Although, to T.J. Ward, I felt, at least the way I understood it, was much more of the team forcing him out than the other way around. The team decided they wanted to go in the different direction. At least that was the feeling that I got, much more than T.J. Ward necessarily I'm
just talking about typical fan.
But I know what you mean. Oh, no, I know exactly what you mean. Exactly what you mean. And speaking of fans and the Browns, this is kind of a good way to wrap this whole thing up. Jim Brown statue going to be built. What's your thoughts? Obviously, people are chiming in left field, right field with different opinions. Jim Brown, the football player, Jim Brown, the human being, perhaps different stories of different parts of their lives. What do you think about it?
Well, I think you know enough about me, and we've talked enough about it to know that I'm an admirer of Jim Brown with the understanding of the fact that his track record of his treatment of women has been less than stellar. I also look at it this way, and you saw the 7,000-word article I wrote about Jim Brown.
Yes.
Where I get into all of that stuff and talk about it and basically say, hey, there's no excuse. And none of the other good works that Jim Brown has done are an excuse for the misogyny and the fact that he's, over his life, admitted to fighting with women, smacking women around, and he's been accused of rape on more than one occasion, even though he's never been convicted of it. So all that is regrettable. But I also would suggest that people look at Jim Brown and look at Jim Brown's upbringing and look at the fact that Jim Brown was pretty much deserted by his mom when he was, 2 years old. She, not deserted, but she moved and left him to be raised by his grandmother. The scars that guy went through, going through high school, going through college, the racism that he faced not only in college but once he got to the NFL, all those things contribute to, and obviously his upbringing, his parentage situation there, it's going to contribute to your attitudes towards other people and your attitudes towards women. And it's not an excuse, but if you look at the big picture of Jim Brown's life, those things are understandable, if not excusable, okay? He also has spent the better part of his adult life working for the betterment and the empowerment of young men, specifically young black men and young Hispanic men. All of that stuff has been, in my opinion, very admirable. Jim Brown, in 1961, Jared, was the highest paid player in the NFL. He made $30,000. Oh, yeah. That was, he never received the money that today's players get. He has never really been, of money. He's never been wealthy. And he has always given back to the community, given back especially to blacks. And he was instrumental in organizing blacks and black players in the NFL and getting them to stand up for themselves in a league that can only be considered to be very, very racially biased at the time in the 60s when the society as a whole was going through all that. I think on balance, when he stands before his maker someday, he's going to be on the positive side in terms of what he's contributed in his life. So I'm an admirer of his, with all that understanding of his flaws, just like all of us have flaws. I think he's deserving of a statue. I'm glad they're building him a statue. I don't care that they're building his statue before they're building Otto Graham's statue or Paul Brown's statue.
That's the
I don't have a problem with any of that, as some people do. So, I'm happy that it's happening. I'm happy that it's happening while he's still around to see it happen. And I think on balance, Jim Brown has led an admirable life.
Yeah, you hit on a couple things for me there. I thought, to me, the first statue that the Browns build, there's no other name other than the person that you named the freaking franchise off of. I know they came close, but they missed it. It's Paul, not Jim. That has to be the first one to me. But and here's the thing with Jim Brown, the age thing that you threw in. I do like the fact that he is around to see it. It was going to happen no matter what. It was going to happen no matter what. Him being here to see it is, I guess, a better thing than waiting until it's posthumous, as happens so many times when people end up being inducted into stuff. I'm with you as far as on the field, everything that he has contributed. I grew up in the 80s when he was starting the American and doing a lot of the stuff that he was doing in the community, doing a lot of stuff out in L.A. and stuff in Cleveland, and a lot of things, as you said, to help young black men and women in their lives, especially more in the athletes. But I always remember my dad, because my dad came from that previous generation. He would always be the guy to remind me of the reasons that Jim Brown wasn't a good guy. Well, did you know Jim Brown did this? Jim Brown threw a lady off a roof. Do you know? I mean, seriously, that was my dad. I mean, hey, let me tell you some so I remember hearing those stories too. So my thoughts were always colored as far as I knew that there was a history there, and so I can totally understand both people's sides of it. But I grew up through the time during the 80s where all of the things that he was doing were really right in my face. So to me, he was always a positive role model, an asset to the communities that he was a part of. But again, that's the second half, and I totally understand people that have a problem with the things that came before me.
Yeah, and like I said, there's no, one doesn't make up for the other.
Right.
One thing we know about Jim Brown, he had a terrible temper. He was never willing to concede an argument with men or women. He could get violent with men and or women. I got angry with his wife one time. He went out to the garage and he took a shovel to the front of her car. Didn't hit her, but got violent. Took his violent streak out on her vehicle with a shovel in the garage.
What would we say if Johnny Manziel did that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so we know that. And one thing about Jim Brown too is that he never apologized for anything. Now that's not necessarily a great character trait, but he is what he is. He acknowledges it, and he admits he made mistakes. And he's a different person in his 80s, 70s, and 80s than he was when he was in his 20s and 30s, as most of us are and will be. But changed. He is regretful about certain things, but he's not an apologizer. We know that about him. But again, like I said, the admirable traits and the good works that he's done for a fellow man don't excuse the fact that in other times of his life he's been abusive toward women. Two things are two sides of the coin, and presumably his statue is being erected at Cleveland Stadium because of his being a great football player, and about that there is no doubt.
No, absolutely, and again, I'm with you. I'm with you on all of that. I mean, even if you want to hold the things he did against him, I think you look at the different the years. I mean, we're talking, first off, a man that's 80 years old. I mean, he has lasted through several different eras, different generations, different things, and this is not excuse making, but different things, as you said, were more acceptable, less acceptable, different times, different things, and all of that. But you look at everything he's done in the second half of his life, and I think of myself too. I mean, hey, I did a lot of selfish stuff when I was in my 20s here and there. And I mean, it's not like I was burning down the world, but I was into my own thing a little bit too much. And I try to be a little more about other people now. And I would hate for people to color me based on only one part of my life and at least not balance it by looking at everything. I don't have a problem with it other than I'd have done Paul Brown. I may have done them both together, to be honest with you. I may have done Paul Brown and Jim Brown together as the first Brown statues. You knew it was coming. The Tribe's got a couple now. You figure the Cavs aren't going to put one up until they put the LeBron statue up. For now, he'll have to be happy with the billboard across from the stadium. But actually, real quick, I was joking with somebody about that. I said, well, LeBron, and then I said, well, who? There's not a chance in the world that the Cavs, I'm not saying should be, there's not a chance in the world the Cavs build anybody a statue before LeBron, wouldn't you think?
Oh, yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. He would be the guy. I mean, there's other great players in the franchise history.
I know. What I'm saying is I don't think they would choose.
A couple numbers retired, but I don't see an Austin Carr statue or a Mark Price statue or a Brad Daugherty statue being thrown up anytime soon. And if there's statue talk in Cavs history, it's going to be LeBron.
I think he'd be the only one. I mean, we're talking about a statue. We're not talking about, as you said, jerseys hanging or anything like that. I think that would clearly be the one, I mean, everybody can wax nostalgic about World Be Free, but to me, you build statues for people that transcended the game, not just incredibly popular players. And that's why, at least with Jim Thome, you can make the all-time home run argument. With Bob Feller, you can make the all-time argument. There's, to me, statue is different than lithograph, billboard, jersey retired, anything. And I think people need to hold the statue to a little higher standard, don't you think?
I do, and I think that that's a good point that is being made in the argument against the Jim Brown statue. And I've heard that argument being made by several people, not least Bruce Hooley last week on the radio. Heard him making that case that basically, as opposed to hanging a jersey in the rafters or putting a name on your Ring of Fame or whatever in your stadium, that the statue does signify a higher level of admiration in general about a player as a person as opposed to as a player. And that's a valid point. It's a point that I don't necessarily feel is enough to not build a statue of Jim Brown, but I certainly think it's a valid point that people make, and it's one that I can appreciate and respect.
All right, we'll talk some more about this next week, and we'll look at some Indian spring training. We'll see how things are going heading into the first game. We'll talk some football, too. Let's look at some quarterbacks next week, since that's what the Browns are hopefully doing right now.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We can talk about Wentz and Lynch and Goff and do a little comparison. And I'm anxious to see what, here's my big question about that, and I'll just take 30 seconds.
Yeah.
The Browns need a quarterback really, really bad, but the Browns also just hired guys and put them in positions of authority that are going to be all analytics oriented. That are going to be, if there's a motto for an analytics guy, it's best player available. Okay, if there's a course of action that says build for the long term as opposed to the short term, then you've got to take with the second pick the player that you think is the second best player available. Or maybe, if you got lucky, the first best player available in the entire draft, regardless of position. Be interesting to see the pressure that falls on Sashi Brown and Hugh Jackson and the rest of that front office team. Pressure to take a quarterback if, in fact, it goes against everything that their analytics tells them and everything against their best player available formula that their computer inputs spit out. That, to me, is going to be the most interesting thing. Will there be pressure to follow their program, or is their program superseded by, we're not going anywhere till we get a quarterback in this franchise that's elite? So will one of those three quarterbacks be ruled to be elite by the analytics team or not? And would they dare pass by all three of those top quarterbacks and take a Joey Bosa or Lecron, one of the wide receivers or an outside linebacker or Miles Jack or somebody, if that's what their BPA formula is telling them. So we can kick that all around. I'm sure that'll be kicked around ad nauseum before we get to April.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I want to talk about next week, too, because what you just described is what losing franchises do. When you have 15 players on your list and number 16 is the quarterback, but you need a quarterback, so you take him with the number 2 pick. That's why the Browns are in the shape that they're in right now. I'm with you. You take whoever's number 1 on your list, and if somebody takes him, you take number 2 on your list, and so on and so forth until the quarterback is near the top of your list, and then that's the guy that you take. If they don't, we're stuck, man. I mean, they're going to screw up another draft here, and then we're going to be doing this all over again. Let's talk about it next week, my friend.
That sounds good, Jerry. I'm next being with you.
You got it. My man, Dan Wismar, EverybodyHatesCleveland.com. Check out his latest. He'll be back with us next week. We'll be back as well, talking about the Cavs coming out of the break some more. We'll see how they do this week. 4 games upcoming for them. Indians position players report. Spring training really gets rolling a week from today. We'll talk about that. We'll get into the Browns, look at some quarterbacks, start doing draft talk and more as we wind down the month of February. Thank you guys for being with us. I'll be on the radio a couple of times this week. Wednesday evening, I will be calling the North High and Brush playoff game at 7 p.m. That should be a lot of fun as well. The winner of that one this Saturday, 2 p.m. on the 26th, I believe, this Saturday, 27th. I'll be calling South High School playing the winner of North and Brush, and that one will be on 13:30 a.m. as well. Looking forward to that. Some basketball final. That's it. My season's over. Basketball season is over this week, and hopefully these teams win in the playoffs and keep it going a little bit longer. But yeah, my broadcasting season is just about up, so it's us doing our thing here. We'll be back next week. Guys, join us. Same bat time, same bat channel, noon, Monday, live here on the Sports Fix. Until then, have a great week. Enjoy all the Cavs hoop action and so much more, and get back here with us. Spring training, all of that. Monday, we're talking about it live next here on The Fix.